Hello, Hunter.
Oh, hey there.
What do you want?
Well, you've provided us with so many weapons.
That I have.
I was just wondering if maybe you had an entire new one in there somewhere?
Excuse me?
You know, like a totally new type of weapon.
How dare you?
What?
I have given you so much, and all you want is more.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Your punishment for this insolence is to stand trial in front of the court of hunters.
Sorry, the what? Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages, it is finally time. Time for me to piss off every individual hunter on the planet. Today I'm not just bad-mouthing a couple of weapons, I'm not just praising a couple of weapons, I'm talking about all of them. And I am 100% certain that no one will agree with me completely. So get your angry typing fingers ready and prepare for my be-all, end-all tier list of weapons in Iceborne. And just for a little cherry on top, I'm going to throw in the usage stats for each weapon on PlayStation, as that is my console of choice, just so you can see how the rest of the community feels about your weapon as well. Starting off then with tier E, dual blades. And I finally realized what my issue with them is. I can understand why you would be surprised by me having them all the way down here, as I did use them as just my main weapon for the entire playthrough of Base World, but I stopped, and I barely used them since. And why is that? I didn't know for a very long time, but now I do. You don't hit the buttons fast enough to reflect the speed of the weapon. The actual inputs feel like you are controlling something heavy and slow, and it totally blows my immersion with the weapon.
We refer to as controlled immersion.
And since I realize this, it makes me physically uncomfortable while I'm playing it. So no matter what other parts of it, I can't stand this. Until the button inputs actually match the supposed speed of the weapon, I just can't stand it. So it's in last place for me. It has 7% of the player base using it on PlayStation, which is the 6th most used. Next in tier D then, we have Sword and Shield, which is of course a sword and a shield. I still feel like this weapon is too much of a jack of all trades. Like, I know that people like that, and I get how that could be a benefit, but to me, once you get to the end game and you get to the point where you can start building as many sets as you want, you don't really have to worry about having one main thing. There's just no situation where I would rather use one of the sword and shield playstyles over just using a different set with an entirely different weapon that accomplishes the same thing. Aside from support builds, of course, which I do believe in, and is the reason that this weapon isn't also an E tier for me. Sword and Shield is used by 3% of the player base, and that is 12th. Next up is the Insect Glaive. I just have this huge mental block around the Insect Glaive. The idea that aerial Insect Glaive is inefficient really bothers me. And when you look at the numbers, even when you build for aerial, the actual damage of aerial really is very sad.
It's science.
And I know I shouldn't base my enjoyment of a weapon off of the numbers that it makes pop up, but because World added visible numbers, it affects me. And I can't play this weapon the way that I consider the most fun without having it nag at the back of my mind the entire time that I could be doing way more damage even in the exact same set by just staying on the ground. 7% of players use the Insect Glaive, which makes it the 7th most used. Next up in tier C, starting off tier C, is the Switch Axe. And zero-sum discharge just still doesn't always attach to the right part, and that bothers me a massive amount. I have no actual issue with the Switch Axe past that, really, and here in tier C, that is mostly what things are about. I have nothing huge against any of the things in this tier, just minor issues, but I also would just rather play other weapons the entire time. Switch Axe is played by 5% of the player base, which is 10th. Then we have Light Bowgun, which, you know, it's hit a bit of a sweet spot for me recently. I played it a fair amount, I finally got into a proper sticky ammo build, and even the rapid fire elemental sets are pretty neat in their own right. But who the hell actually enjoys managing ammo as a mechanic? Like, not even the item box managing ammo part, not even the, oh, I've got to craft a million nut set, the man who makes plants work. It's the botanist. I forgot what a botanist was called. But the stuff on the hunts, because you use your entire collection of ammo before a monster dies, and then you have to craft a bunch more. And with a lot of the ammo types, you have to do that crafting multiple times on a hunt. It just feels really weird to sit there and craft ammo while the thing is in front of you, and that part doesn't agree with me. I get that it's a base part of the weapon, I get that it's important to the weapon's identity, but I don't enjoy it. And it makes the thing feel far clunkier than it ever should, especially for the light bowgun. 8% of players use the light bowgun, which is 5th, and that one's actually gone up a lot recently, I think specifically because of Safi'jiiva. A lot of people have been using light bowgun builds against Safi'jiiva, which makes sense. Next up we have the heavy bowgun, which of course has the same ammo problems with me that light bowgun has, but the added negative of the absolute and complete lack of mobility that I feel when using it. Again, yes, it's a part of the weapon, but no, that doesn't make me okay with it. For whatever reason, when I have to move with the heavy bowgun and I lose out on a couple of shots here or there, it feels like I'm losing so much more damage than a melee weapon repositioning. And I know logically it isn't that big of a difference between the two, but it affects me on a mental level.
Everything that guy just says is bullshit.
And therefore affects my opinion on the weapon. Heavy bowgun is used by 7% of the player base, which is 8th. Then in tier B, we start off with the weapon that starts with B, the bow. And here we're getting into the tier of weapons that I do genuinely enjoy playing, just not as much as some others. Starting with the good old classic bow, which actually used to be my main weapon for a relatively long time. It has the ranged fun of the bow guns, but with the only ammo management around being your coatings, which is extremely minimal and mostly in the background, and it has super high mobility as a weapon. Like, I would say top 3 mobile weapons in the entire game if you're playing it right. And I would say it's just sort of fun, you know? But there's a limit to what you can actually do with the weapon, and the gameplay loop feels more or less the same between the majority of the monsters that you fight. So it just sort of sits here in the high middle tier for me, and 10% of players do use the bow, which is 3rd. It's a particularly popular weapon.
I'm popular.
Next up then we have the great sword. I'm not allowed to use this weapon because it's Josh's main, but in the few times that I have sneaked around behind his back with it, I've had a nice time. But to be completely honest with you, and don't let him hear this, I just don't think it's that special. Not to me, at least. It's enjoyable, it's satisfying, and it's extremely functional, but I just think that there are a number of weapons that are more enjoyable, more satisfying, and more functional. But 11% of the player base disagrees, which makes this weapon the 2nd most used on PlayStation. Then next up in tier B, and the final one for tier B, is Lance. Lance is a weapon that has advanced a lot in my head over time, but also sort of wound up stagnant here in the middle as well. I finally understand the playstyle to an extent, the unrelenting pokes from a position of ultimate safety, and I'm a massive fan of the Iceborne additions too. But I can't deny in my heart of hearts, sort of like Insect Glaive, that the playstyle that I enjoy the most with the weapon is problematic, which for Lance, post Iceborne updates, is the clutch claw counter, where you go flying and attach to the monster. It's super effective in a crazy number of ways. However, it gives you a sort of Rocksteady mental effect where you stay latched on through attacks while still taking the damage, and against some monsters, in fact against a large number of monsters once tempered, doing the clutch claw counter as a regular part of your moveset is simply going to get you killed.
Oh my god, there's a little goat eating the wire!
It isn't a matter of if, but when, and as much as I enjoy the additions, this has to put the weapon back down to a bit of a happy medium for me. Then, in tier A, starting off tier A, we have Longsword. Oh, Longsword, we have a long and storied past, don't we? We do. I have an innate love for this weapon and its parry-heavy playstyle, but there are still some glitches that hunters have found video evidence of, where you use one of your counters at the exact right time, the player flashes like you got it exactly correct, and you still get hit, and it uses your shit. Now, these are few and far between, but when it happens, it's absolutely infuriating, and honestly, that is the only thing that put Longsword in the 2nd highest tier instead of the top tier for me, because I just love the playstyle otherwise, and Longsword, unsurprisingly, is used by 19% of players, which is 1st.
Was there ever a question?
Next up in the A tier then is the Gunlance, and this one is more of a recent realization for me. Now, when I say this, I mean more wide and long Gunlance, because normal is a ton of fun, but I just haven't quite gotten comfortable enough with it to hunt with it consistently without dying. However, that said, both of the other 2 shelling types for this weapon just don't focus on the bladed attacks at all, and just want to fire shells all the damn time. Explosions are cool, so Gunlance is cool, and guess what? The explosions can't crit and only lose damage when you get down to yellow sharpness, so you need minimal sharpness skills, and you don't need any crit skills in the first place. Do you know what this allows? Utility. Tons and tons and tons of utility that doesn't normally fit into the highest end damage sets in the game, not to mention how much fun it is to mix said utility with the weapon itself, and go something like Evade Extender, Backstep Gunlance. I just love this weapon. I have few negatives, I just love it slightly less than the other ones left for S tier, and Gunlance has a 4% usage rating on the PlayStation, which leaves it at 11th place. Starting off tier S then is one that has just jumped around for me a lot, in Charge Blade. This is probably my most recent infatuation, though it's died down a little bit in recent weeks. For the longest time, I did not get why people liked Charge Blade. I thought it was mechanically far too heavy, and that the weapon just required too much focus. But as I slowly got better at the game, and more importantly understood the monster's attack patterns, Charge Blade just got more and more appealing to me, to the point where now I simply view it as better longsword. It literally has the same style of counter-heavy gameplay once you get used to the guard points, but files and file attacks are awesome. They are really cool, and if you die with Charge Blade, you don't have to spend 3 minutes building your power back up, so you know, it's less frustrating when you do happen to suck a little bit with the weapon. And Charge Blade has an 8% player usage rating, which is 4th. Next up then, and second on the list, is Hunting Horn. Oh, Hunting Horn, I will fight for you until the day I die. I just won't actually fight with you all that often. The best way to label Hunting Horn is the best weapon in the game that no one plays.
That is brand new information!
In my personal opinion, it just feels weird to play it in solo hunts, and as most hunters will do a mix of both multiplayer and solo hunts in their general day-to-day hunting, most people won't main this weapon for that reason. It has so many negative things attributed to it by the community. It's a support weapon, blah blah. It's not. Its damage is more than fine, and it is incredibly fun to play. I love blunt weapons, and the musical focus on this is just something really special and unique to Monster Hunter, and I have never seen a Hunting Horn player in my party and thought, oh god, not this thing again. Not once. This weapon is underrated. This weapon is underused, and as someone who rarely uses it myself, I have absolutely no right to complain. The Hunting Horn is used by 2% of the players and is 14th. Finally then, is unsurprisingly the hammer. You knew it had to be up here for me, no matter the list, no matter the topic. If it involves weapons being talked about in a positive light, especially since Iceborne's changes, it had to be hammer. In my opinion, the correct answer just is hammer.
Bonk, bonk on the head. Bonk, bonk. Bonk, bonk.
I love blunt weapons, I love mobility, I love big, chunky hits, I love versatility, and this weapon has all of that in spades, which is just so unique. How many weapons, not just in Monster Hunter, but in gaming in general, can claim to have attacks that feel big, meaty, and chunky while not feeling slow, while not feeling like you can barely move while holding it? This weapon acts as if it is much smaller than it is, but without making it feel wimpy in any way, shape, or form. And Iceborne's addition of the clutch claw combos are just the best goddamn thing. The slide attack being the best option in areas where you can slide is cool, but even more than that, it is fun because the slide attack itself is incredible in so many ways, and Iceborne essentially makes you able to access this spinning sliding attack just off of any charged strike, which if the weapon was a 9 out of 10 for me before Iceborne in base world, this has raised it to a pure 10. I love this thing to death, and no matter how much I play other weapons, I always wind up back here at my big solid stick of death. I love you, hammer! And 6% of players use the hammer on the PlayStation, which unfortunately puts it at 9th. You're all wrong for not playing it. And that just about covers it, everyone. I've been Cotton Dinosaur, and this has been my Iceborne weapon tier list. Do you agree with my choices? Are you absolutely livid that heavy bowgun was at the top of tier C instead of the bottom of tier B? Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet. This is the brand new outro to tell you all the things that you do that we love, so let's start with something simple and say, oh, we love your eyes. When they're watching us play video games, we make a bunch of jokes that are kinda lame, or when they gaze upon our failures as we try to kill the monsters or report important news about the kingdom Animalia. Rage, Cotton, and Hollow are all here, talking about the things you want to hear, so if you want to be the first to hear, like and subscribe and the bell and will cheer. Some of you are patrons even though we are all the noobs and you're the pros. There's nothing we can do to thank you. No, really, there's nothing we could possibly do. Goodbye.